I'm getting ready to start another drive, about 225 miles. The guessometer says I can do 246 under these conditions. We'll see. We'll see. It is 52 degrees. I'm at 93% state of charge. I was hoping to have the car charged to 100% and be ready right before I go, but technical difficulties on our end, not the car. We're only at 93%. Running the heat, having the steering wheel warmer on, and we're gonna go out and hit the road and see how it goes.
Your efficiency is very dependent, I guess, on the battery temperature. The car was 52 because we pulled it out of the garage when we started the trip, so it's probably going to do pretty well on this first leg. And also this first leg, the average 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour is also pretty good because the wind wasn't that bad, and we were driving on state roads, so 45, 55, 60 miles per hour, a couple of stoplights, a couple of stop signs to have a regenerative power collected from the batteries. So it worked out pretty well. And now we have our next image. The first segment on state roads was about 43 miles. So I captured this photo about 46 miles, which is now double. So we have half the driving on state roads and half the driving on the interstate at interstate speeds. And our efficiency has fallen from 3.5 to 3. And the 3 is the average of the two types of driving. So we can deduce mathematically that while we got 3.5 on the state roads, we're now getting 2.5 on interstate at interstate speeds. So your speed can dramatically affect your efficiency. You need to understand that. And don't rely on the fact that it's saying you can go 232 more miles because it's using your historic driving. But in the future, minutes following this, I will be driving a little bit over 70. So the efficiency is going to be lower than the average. I just got a quick clip of this exit sign to show you it's a little fuzzy. We were in motion. That under the Pilot, it has EV charging. So this is a new thing that starts to show people how frequent and common EV charging is. And often throughout most of America, every 10, 20, 30 miles, there is going to be another EV charger. Of course, there are locations where there'll be bigger gaps, but we will fill those in. And you might still have out in the Southwest United States or the Central North, like in Montana or something, where it's still 50 or 60 or more miles between charging locations. But you can also have that between gas locations because these are very, very big places. Our next image is me having arrived at the location, 110 miles. Now the driving average efficiency is 2.9. That includes our 3.5 from the very beginning quarter of our drive. And with the next 3 quarters now having been done, I can see that our average driving on the interstate wasn't as low as 2.5, but maybe 2.6 or 2.7 to bring this average down to just 2.9. So way better than a previous trip where I was getting something like 1.8 miles per kilowatt hour on the interstate. Here, the county roads were 3.5, and driving on the interstate worked out to be closer to 2.7, let's say. I'm just kind of guesstimating off the top of my head, but a pretty good number.
We're getting ready to start our drive back north at 48% now. Probably could just barely make it, but we're going to stop anyway. So I wanted to show you how that works. We just go to this little button here. Navigation, Ionna Charging Station, Gilman, Illinois. Fingers crossed that this works.
Would you like guidance to this location?
Yes. And it's that easy.
The route guidance will start now.
It's got us all set up, and where it says 48%, the preconditioning has not started at this time because it's not needed based on the car's logic. 49 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'll keep a track on when that preconditioning turns on and let you know in the next little segment.
As it turned out, just 2 minutes later, the preconditioning turned on, and I was able to get this picture of the center console screen of the Ioniq 5. And on the far right, it says battery care 11%. And so right now, it's used 11% of the total energy so far in this trip, and this is only a few miles down the road. And you can see the current rate of energy being used as 4.3 kilowatt. So if it did this for an entire hour, it would use 4.3 kilowatt hours. The battery on this car, I think off the top of my head, is somewhere around 77, 80 kilowatt hour in size. So doing this for an entire hour would use 4.3 roughly of those kilowatt hours, which would be about 5% of the total energy available in the battery. And since we already drove half the trip, now doing the other half of the trip at this rate would use 10% of the effective range that we have available. I run these numbers constantly through my head, and it's just nice to know that maybe a 10% range loss allows you to charge much quicker. Or, like I said, a 5% range loss on the whole trip, but 10% on the return trip back, just because maths. The climate is using very little. The electronics is using very little, and all of the energy is going to the drivetrain. So at these temperatures, 40s, around 49, maybe when we started this trip, at least started it back, the energy to keep the cabin warm and a little heat, run the heated seats and the heating steering wheel is not a real big deal. That doesn't really affect your range. It's going to be more about the battery temperature and about the efficiency of the car in wind. And so that ended up being our big problem, because when we got to our charging location in Gilman, you can see from this screenshot that our average efficiency is 2.6. So not so bad. Again, now the temperature is 46, so it started at almost 50. Now it's 46, and even though we've only driven about 50-something miles, almost 60 miles, we're now down to 16%. And part of that is because we lost maybe an extra 4 or 5% because of the charging of the preconditioning of the battery. In these conditions, we could have made it from the south suburbs of Chicago all the way down to Champaign and back if the car was at 100% when we started, but it was only at 93. So that kind of obligated us to make this stop, but considerably more efficient than the trip I made when the temperature was 34 on average and the wind was pretty close to 40. Here the wind is now picking up, but the start of our drive, the first couple of hours, it was only 10 or 15 miles per hour. It's now probably at this point in the drive getting closer to 20, so it's starting to hurt our range more than the temperature is hurting our range. And again, here's the screenshot at the Ionna in Gilman showing that we used 9% of our energy on this trip for preconditioning the battery. And I did want to show you this. It's kind of out of time sequence, but it's important for where we are in this story. The 109 miles underneath the second, starting from the left, we have 2.2 and then 2.9. The 2.9 is the efficiency of the drive down to Champaign. And the 2.2 is the efficiency of driving from Champaign up to Gilman, keeping in mind that this was using the battery preconditioning for a good part of that trip. So without the preconditioning, we maybe would have been at 2.5, 2.6, actually probably more like 2.4, 2.5. So this is now less efficient than the previous drive, even at the interstate portions, because the wind is coming from the north. So now we're fighting the wind, and the wind is a little faster. So it slows us down. And I wanted to show you, this is the Ionna charger in Gilman. 2B is the focus here, because you can see I don't know that you can tell from this picture, but in the very center of this NACS, North American Charging Standard, aka the Tesla plug, there's a bit of plastic that apparently broke off in there and makes this connector unusable. I previously reported this to Ionna about 2 weeks earlier, and it has not been fixed. So that's a real buzzkill. But we went ahead and plugged in the car at 2A, and you can see here that it failed. So this is not cool. This is the kind of stuff that makes people very concerned about driving an electric car, because you pull up to the station and it doesn't work. And you can see at the top of this screenshot, I'm on 2A. 2B was physically not usable. 2A connected to the car just fine. The car and Ionna talked. You could hear connectors going and all the clicks that you expect. And at the very moment the power started to flow, it aborted. So I moved the car. And here's, another screen. It doesn't matter so much about that. But now we're at 3A. And after a couple of minutes of fucking around, same problem. Session aborted. So I'm starting to get not happy at this point in time. Now, the nice thing is that the charger density on Interstate 57 is such that I could have gone to another location. I also could have just gone almost next door to the Pilot Flying J station, which has EV Go chargers, and gotten a charge. That is some of the logic that I use in picking a location to stop. Where possible, you want to stop so that you have enough range so that if that location doesn't work, you can go to another location. Where possible, you want to plan your charging trip to stop at a location that has a second set of chargers. When we're driving from Chicago to Florida in an EV, as an example, one of the locations we stop in extreme southern Georgia is called Valdosta. It now has 3 different charging providers in the same location. But here we have this problem, and I have to decide what to do. So I called that number on the bottom of the screen, you can see there, and talked to someone at Ionna, and we started to troubleshoot. And of course, I was able to tell them that I used the NACS handles because my 2025 Ioniq 5 has an NACS or a Tesla port native to the car, and so it wasn't a connection or an adapter problem. I told them that I was on charger 2 and charger 3, and I called them when I was on charger 5B. And we were going through the logic step by step to try to figure out the process. And the person on the other end of the phone wasn't able to figure out what was wrong, because everything, according to the data that he could see, showed that everything was working correctly. So they were going to elevate it. Well, while they were elevating the process, I tried to do the charging in a different sequence of events. So with Ionna and more car charging locations, they have a thing called plug and charge, or other magical ways where the charger can talk to your car. But at this Ionna station, the first step is to plug the tower into your car, and the tower and the car talk, and they say, hey, we know each other. We know what to do. Plug and charge is active. This guy has an account set up. He's approved plug and charge. He's got a credit card linked to it. Go ahead and start charging auto-magically. And to be fair, this is something that Tesla has been doing for many years. But I have done that at this station before. I've done this with a different car at different locations. It's really handy. But to isolate the problem, because Ionna was telling me that their towers were perfectly fine, and I've been able to charge my car at other fast chargers. So it's not the tower per se, and it's not the car per se. What I did, instead of following the step-by-step instructions on the screen from Ionna, I instead didn't plug in the car, but on the bottom right of this, you can see it's cut off in the image, is a credit card reader. So I tapped my phone, and it recognized the credit card and Google Pay, and said, you've been approved. And then I plugged the charger back in. Actually, at that time, I was now at 5A, and as you can see it here, I plugged it in at 5A and used the credit card reader, and it started right up. So now we were able to isolate that the problem in this has something to do with the plug and charge. So if you find yourself at a charger and you can't get it to work, one possible solution is to change the order of events and how you're doing it. And if you're using plug and charge, try to not use plug and charge. If you're using the machine, try using the app. A lot of chargers have apps. Ionna doesn't, but I think I've heard that you can also start an Ionna charging session using the Charge Point app. I'll have to double check on that. But it quickly ramped up to 199 kilowatt. I was really hoping to get into the low to mid 200s, but we had been sitting here for almost 10 minutes not charging. So the car was just sitting there, not heating the battery, not really using the battery, and the battery got colder and colder. So we only got 199 kilowatts and charged the car up to the 42% and reset some of the readings here. Temperature is now 46, and started our last leg up to the Chicago suburbs, which you can see in this image here. The average efficiency was 2.6 miles per kilowatt hour, and about 45% of this drive was interstate, and the other 55% was state highway driving. So on average lower speed, which is why the efficiency was 2.6, not the 2.2. Ended up at 34% of range left, 16% battery charge still left. And that was perfectly fine for me because I have a level 2 home charger. So I didn't need to make a big charge at that Ionna station. So this is another place where people can make mistakes where they want to charge the car to 100. Don't do that. This car, under ideal conditions, can go from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes. If you do 20 to 70%, which is now half the battery, you can do that in about 12 or 13 minutes, and that will provide you enough energy to drive 2 to 2.5 hours. So that's often what we will do, is we'll just need the charge for 12 or 13 minutes, drive another 2.5 hours, and just keep going down like that, because often after 2.5 hours, we need to use a bathroom, or we choose to stretch our legs, or we switch drivers, or we get some food, whatever we want to do. And it works out pretty well. But after, of course, I took this picture, I pulled it into the garage and plugged it in. And, that was that. It was pretty easy with that one little problem that was isolated to plug and charge. And now I'm going to have to see if I can fix that by uninstalling and reinstalling the app, or maybe there's an update from the Hyundai people from the Hyundai app. We'll get it figured out, and we'll just keep moving forward.